Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 5 of the Podioslave podcast, the podcast for music nerds. We got a cool episode for you guys tonight. How you guys feeling? This is Anthony, and I'm here with Nate and Tony. What's up, guys?
Hey, man.
You guys feeling
Hey,
good?
hey, what's going on, guys? How are you?
Another week. It's
Yeah.
April 10th, so we're almost halfway through April. And how you guys doing?
I'm good, man. Yeah. Just been living at home, stuck in our house, working from home, doing stuff on the computer, trying to get some exercise, trying to stay light, trying to be as happy as possible.
Yep, same. Yeah, trying to work, stay focused, geeking, nerding out on the side or simultaneously, the usual.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to these episodes. I know before we get into kind of the rundown for tonight, I do want to shout out some of our international listenership. So we been able to take a peek at the metrics for who's listening to the episode. And certainly we have folks in the U.S., but also there's listeners in the U.K., Ireland, Japan. So shout out to everyone, domestic, international, who's checked us out. I know we've always said that we'd do this even if no one listened. So the fact that people are tuning in and enjoying it, want to give a shout out to you guys.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I know talking to a few friends around the States that they've listened to it in a couple different states too, North Carolina, Texas, California, saw Colorado, saw Pennsylvania on there. So there's some people out there checking it out. We really appreciate that. It's definitely something that we're passionate about. And again, like Anthony said, we would do this without the camera rolling, without the microphones plugged into the computers. So for people to want to listen to us talk about music, that's kind of cool. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It's humbling, people globally tuning in, listening to us geeks, just kind of shoot the shit.
Yeah.
And it's fun to interact with people on the socials. So if you haven't already, check us out on Instagram at Podioslave. Same handle for Twitter at Podioslave. We're always geeking out on there, mentioning throwback dates for old shows or concerts or albums and whatnot. And if you guys have any ideas, definitely check us out on those and send us an email. Send it over to podioslavepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll weave something into the next episodes.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of this episode, we're going to be going over some kind of odds and ends this week, things that happened, things we were paying attention to, and some of those things being Zoom sessions. We'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a little bit. And then the meat of this episode is music what ifs, which is super nerdy. It's kind of something we hashed out independently, so none of us really know what we did our research on. But yeah, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about for the most part on this episode. And obviously your typical long and extended tangents as well. So
we're good at those. We are definitely good at those.
Yeah, come for the topics, please stay for the tangents, right?
Exactly.
So what happened this week?
Man.
What's new this week? What are you guys into?
Well, we had a couple of anniversaries of albums this week that were kind of big for us. I know as music fans, Tool's Undertow turned 27, I want to say, on Tuesday.
Yep.
And Offspring Smash turned 26.
Shout out to Dexter.
Yeah, right. We talked about that album a couple episodes back because it was one of the first albums that I had ever owned as a 9-10-year-old. So seeing those two things kind of pop up in this day in history, I just gave them both a spin. I hadn't listened to that Offspring album in quite a while. I just remembered it being, full of energy, and it definitely still is, and it really holds up. I feel like same with that Tool album. They both really hold up. They don't sound like they're pushing 30 years old at this point. So I was pretty excited to spin those again this week.
And not even
Nice.
production-wise. Like, the production is great, but the songs hold up. Like, if you dropped the Undertow album today, it would be a hit. Like, it would still bang.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, that's why the 90s are great, man. That stuff, a lot of that music's just so timeless. Tool's a great example of that, and just amazing musicianship. We were kind of geeking out on Danny Carey and how amazing of a drummer that guy is. He's our, he's like, for our generation, he's like our John Bonham.
He's an alien, dude. He's an alien.
Yeah. It just doesn't make how that guy plays is really hard to comprehend. But
it reminded me, just seeing that kind of pop up. I remember when Tool dropped Fear Inoculum last late summer, how they hadn't put an album out in years, and they just, even though rock is, quote unquote dead, they were top of the charts again. It's like, and kids who had no idea who Tool was were like, "What? Who is this Tool band, and why are they number one?" It was just funny to see all that stuff on the internet, and it kind of brought that back to me. I was like, "Yeah, you're right. This would do the same thing had it come out today. If Undertow came out today, this Friday, it would be right at the top again, because that's just the kind of band they are, and as talented musicians as they are, I'm not surprised by that."
Nice.
Well, it's funny. When you were joking around about the kids were upset. No, they actually were, because I forget who it was, but they beat out some other hyped record for the number one spot. Who was it?
Was it Katy Perry or
who the hell was it?
I'll look it up. But yeah, I remember that being a big deal. Like, who was it? Lana Del Rey? Might have been Lana Del Rey, something like that.
Oh, we need Sutler.
Yeah, where's Sutler? Look that up while we keep talking, bud.
So Nate, I know one of your favorite bands, my favorite bands, Tony's favorite bands, Deftones. This week was the 4-year anniversary of Gore. So that came out in 2016. So I was actually looking at years between albums for the Deftones, and that means that they should be dropping an album pretty soon. So that was 4 years old, and I'm sure we'll go into a deep dive of Deftones in the future, but that was a cool anniversary to see. And also, I saw today, 19 years ago today, in 2001, Thursday's Full Collapse came out, which was really kind of, I don't know about genre defining, but definitely brought a genre to the forefront. Like, I remember seeing Understanding in a Car Crash on MTV2 in the Buzzworthy. I think it was MTV Buzzworthy videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, Understanding in a Car Crash.
The Buzz Bin. Remember the Buzz Bin?
Oh, the Buzz.
You got me into that band, Twan. And
yeah.
Actually, you let me borrow that album in one of our classes in high school. And I remember looking at the cover and being like, "Oh, I just like the artwork alone." And then I checked out the album. I'm like, "Oh," it kind of threw me off. Like, I was like, "This is like a hybrid of like 3 different genres." Yeah, and like that was a cool album. Standing on the Edge of Summer still always stood out. Even though it's like a slower jam.
Well, Standing on the Edge of Summer has like the chill vibe, but then they get into Paris in Flames, which has kind of the chuggy, it's super cool. My last kind of music odds and ends from this week is there's a band called Drain from Santa Cruz, California. They're on Revelation. I actually saw them back in February in Louisville, Kentucky. I went to a metal hardcore fest, LBD, Life and Death Brigade Fest, and they played, and the show was awesome. So I kind of put them on my radar, but they put out a new record today called California Cursed. So if you're into like thrashy hardcore, it's fucking awesome. Like, it's, after seeing them live, the music translates fantastic live. So if you're into, it definitely has a thrashy vibe, check that out. But I know Santa Cruz, is that kind of your neck of the woods, Nate?
Santa Cruz is north, so it's it's just like south of San Francisco.
Yeah.
By an hour and a half or so.
Oh, right on.
Cool area. Yeah. Really cool area. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I mean, if they can pull it off live, you know that the studio albums are usually not gonna disappoint too much for you, which is always cool. So back to that Tool album, it dethroned Taylor Swift's Lover.
Yeah.
The 14-year-old girls everywhere were upset, all over Twitter and all over Instagram. Who is this Tool, and why are they beating out Taylor Swift in the charts? So that I found that to be kind of funny. So this week was supposed to the Beastie Boys documentary was supposed to hit theaters this week. Have you seen any ads for that kicking around? I'm pretty excited about it. I saw it was Apple TV that was going to have it here end of the month.
Nice.
But, it was supposed to be in theaters this week, and I might have gone to see it had it obviously been a different time. That has been scrapped. So I'm just waiting for it to hit my Apple TV so I can watch it at home.
Wow. Yeah, that's going to be awesome, man. I'm definitely going to check that out for sure. I saw Beastie Boys a few times back when they were all still going before they called it a day. I'm sure that'll be a pretty heavy documentary towards the end.
Yeah, with that, with MCA and yep.
And the way they ended definitely left more to be desired for me. It's like it was just kind of over, and it's like, oh, I know they were older certainly, but that'll be cool. I didn't even know about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, especially some of the older stuff. They just have so many timeless songs, and they were, talk about rap rock before rap rock was a thing.
Oh yeah.
Then we're working with Rick Rubin, stuff like that. So it'll be a cool thing to watch, I think, here in the coming weeks when it finally hits TVs and people can get their eyes on it.
What was the album that came out in '98 by them?
Intergalactic.
Hello Nasty.
Hello Nasty. Song
Hello
was
Nasty.
Intergalactic. Yep.
Man, I remember when that dropped, '98. So we were like in 8th grade.
Great song.
Yeah, I checked that out, and I remember hearing a bunch of the older stuff, and then I bought the anthology, and I bought a bunch of their records. But like, I would always just like listen to their stuff, and like my brother had some of their albums, and then when Hello Nasty came out, I bought all their stuff, and I was just like, oh man, this band's awesome.
That anthology came out when we were like freshmen, so a year later maybe.
Yep.
I loved that. I mean, I played the absolute shit out of that double CD.
Heck yeah.
There were some cool tracks. They had a new track on there, Alive, which is an awesome Beasties track.
That was
haven't heard
awesome.
it. I love that song. A song with Q-Tip, Get It Together, is an awesome song. So there's some good stuff out there if you're a Beasties head.
Mm-hmm.
He's
sure shot.
Here's a nerd question. Do you guys know the history of the album title Hello Nasty?
No.
So what it was there was a local store, and I don't know what the store was, if it was a record store or whatever, but the name of the store was either, just say for argument's sake, Nasty Records. So when you'd call them, they go, "Hello, Nasty."
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was it. There's no big story, just that's it.
Yeah, it's funny how that stuff comes together.
And they decided to name their album that.
I actually was gonna guess and say it had something to do with Egg Raid on Mojo. Do you remember that song? That's on the anthology.
No.
It's like a straight up punk rock song. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, they used to play CBGBs back in the day.
Yep.
Mhm.
I mean, they were big in the 80s when they kicked off there, right? Mid to late 80s. So.
When they played instruments, full band, and that.
Yep.
And they're actually really good at playing the guitar and drums. Like they're all like really talented. So I'm surprised they didn't do more of that later on.
Yeah, I think change it up a little bit. But I mean, they obviously had a long and illustrious career as the Beastie Boys, what they were. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw a story, pivoting a little bit on Twitter, just kind of going in and out of trolling ads the other day, and there was a report, a story on Rolling Stone about the songwriters for both Justin Bieber, which doesn't surprise me, and Beyonce, which did surprise me a little bit, having Zoom calls. So they were able to still write songs for Bieber and Beyonce over Zoom in this time of coronavirus, which was kind of funny to me. I was like, if Beyonce is the biggest female artist in the world, probably one of the biggest artists in the world, right?
Yes.
She's not writing her own music. I'm kind of surprised by that. Bieber, I kind of understand, but Beyonce, really? I was a little surprised.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, like now that like we know that happens and the way technology is, like it makes sense that they're going to still continue. I mean, this would be the perfect time to write music in this, whole coronavirus environment. But to actually like see it in the headline, it's like, yeah, okay.
Yep.
It makes you think. But again, not that surprising, really.
No, and I shouldn't be surprised. I saw it and thought, okay, like she kind of puts the air off that she does everything and is in charge of everything. So to see that she's not actually doing that, and I know the Bayhive is going to come after us now, but but hey, any press is good press, right? But I was just surprised by that.
Yeah, watch out, man. He's married to Jay-Z.
Oh no, I love Jay. Jay writes his own. We know how Jay does. I've seen him do it.
Yeah.
He hears the beat and then he just lays down the track. It's almost a freestyle. Like he is a talented dude. Not that she's not talented. I think she's very talented. I was a little surprised at the needing Zoom calls between 4 different writers to come up with all the single ladies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking a little bit off air on that. Is like, the parallel I think we came up with is like taking steroids in sports or something like that. You need like a team of people to make you the star you are. Like, is that really? I mean, you still need to be athletic, obviously, You know, you still need to work out and you still need to be on top of your game. But when you have a crew of people that's making you like artificially, you know, edge out real competition, I don't know. It's kind of, it is what it is. Yeah.
Yep. I shouldn't be surprised. I shouldn't be upset.
See, even if artists don't have that direct songwriter, anytime a band goes into the studio with a producer, that producer is putting up the guardrails. You know, like take who was it? John Feldman of Goldfinger. Every band that he worked with, like The Used and Story of the Year, like it had his fingerprints all over it. So it's like a slippery slope, really. It's how many bands out there do it all themselves? I don't know.
That brings up a really good point, because every time a band works with Rick Rubin, these albums are a lot of the times they're amazing. They're not always amazing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
We were talking about Slipknot a few times. Like Corey Taylor actually doesn't like that album they did with Rick Rubin at all. I think it's a great album, but
which one was
just
that?
goes to show like Subliminal Verses.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was produced by Rick Rubin. Yeah. So like, you know, is he? And then like sometimes like there's a parody video on YouTube with Serge Tankian from System of a Down where he's like not saying he's trashing on Rick Rubin, but he's definitely trashing on Rick Rubin for his solo album. Like the guy's just sitting on the couch and like he's not really doing anything. He's like, oh, do it again, roll it, you know, let's take another take. Like, so it's hard to say what a producer, like how much influence there is, but like you said, you know, Feldman, like it's all there. Like it's like that's his sound for sure, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But did Rick Rubin really make a better Red Hot Chili Peppers album? I don't know. They're all talented in their own right. You know?
Right, and they put good albums out without Rick Rubin. Same with Slipknot. They put out good albums without Rick Rubin too. So there's it's nice that they're these super producers and everybody gets kind of excited about that. But you're right, it really doesn't matter. There are people behind the scenes that are helping with all of that stuff. So everybody in the studio.
It's like a coach. It's good to have a good coach, but it still is a group effort. And I don't know, like when you self-produce, you can see the flops on those too. Like Blink-182's Neighborhoods, they self-produce that. It's like, album's not that great.
And part of that was the turmoil in the band. But you're right. Yeah. It's compared to coming off of that self-titled album a couple years prior. It's like, this isn't anywhere near as good as that. What happened here?
Yeah, so you need that direction sometimes. But
yep,
to have all the credibility go to one person, it's like, Feldman's a good example of it. It is attributed to him for sure. So I guess there's kind of like both sides of the coin, But
the thing is with Bieber and Beyonce, it reminds me of the whole concept of an industry plant where the labels have like a role they're casting for. You know what I mean? And so then it gets back to, well, how much does the artist even have involvement? So like I know the one that everyone points to nowadays is Billie Eilish. It's like, how much did she write any of that? Is she just literally an actress filling in for a role that one of the major labels just is casted for? And a lot of people think Post Malone is a plant. He was casted for that, and the tattoos are all part of that role, part of that screenplay and script.
And those
definitely,
and those definitely exist. I mean, we've seen them over the course of time. It's changed as far as what's popular. Like late 90s, you had the boy band boom to go juxtapose the nu metal boom. So and even like the Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears types, many more types too. So let's find former Musketeers who can be put in front of a camera and their singing voices work. Aguilera can sing. She's got a great voice. And she can also, play that part for you. So, yeah, there's definitely some of that. And I think we see more of it in pop music, but it happens in every genre. We're not just seeing it's not just happening in pop music.
Yeah, that's good thing to think about, because at the end of the day, like these labels are just looking for some substantial ROI, right? Yeah, money.
Money.
So, yeah. So, I mean, no one likes flops. And obviously the money that goes into putting out an album is crazy. So, a lot of the times unnecessarily, pumping out millions of dollars for instance, hiring Rick Rubin is probably not a cheap ticket.
No,
it's a name brand. He's a great guy. He's probably a great guy.
Yeah, I listened to he does a podcast with Malcolm Gladwell called Broken Record, which If they have an artist on that I like, I will listen to it, and it's very good. If they have somebody on that I don't really, care too much about, I don't always listen. But, he's done some of the interviews, and he sounds like as a guy that wants to give back to the music community, talk to artists, and just kind of vibe. So I could definitely be down with that.
Yeah, he seems very mellow. Looks like very zen, right?
No shoes, man. No shoes.
Yeah, no shoes, long hair, long beard. He worked with the Beastie Boys, right? That's actually where some of their big work came out of. Man.
Have you seen those YouTube videos of him in that studio he has? It almost looks like a trailer. Have you seen that?
No.
Yep.
Yeah, he's just a zen dude. He's like the Phil Jackson of the recording industry. Like,
that's a good analogy. And we love sports analogies here, guys. So just bear with us on that. Big time sports fans. But no, you're right. I think he's very, very much the Phil Jackson of music producers. I mean, his studio is called Shangri-La. Like that. That just lends itself to being zen and mellow. And
it's in Malibu, California, which is like paradise.
Yeah.
So
the no shoes capital of the world, probably.
It's actually like a really posh area, but
he's gonna call us from there next week, guys. I just let you know. I reached out.
First name basis.
We're not there yet. So anything else you guys listened to this week? Nate, you got anything? Or we want to move on to the meat of the episode here?
Yeah, well, I was Deftones always kind of gets a plug in this episode, but yeah, I was listening to a side project. I think, Twan, you had mentioned that you had started playing the Crosses album.
Yeah, revisited it first time in a while, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I love that record, but I also really love one of his other side projects, Palms. So I listened to that album in its entirety today. It's very I love that style of music. It's very spacey and reminds me of it's like Deftones. It's actually the guys from Deftones and ISIS, which is a pretty heavy band. But it always reminds me of bands like the XX, which is kind of spacey, deep melodies and so forth. So I was spinning that today. This week I was again milking my Sirius XM and listening to Bruce Springsteen. He was doing a guest host, playing a bunch of stuff that he digs and music that he wants the world to hear. And you think it would be a lot of older stuff, or like we were saying before with Dave Grohl, these people are fans of all types of genres. So he was playing Common, he was playing Wyclef, and then he's obviously playing a lot of the people that he came up with too. But I'm always surprised. I'm like, oh, it's cool that music is so universal that Bruce Springsteen, the boss, is playing Common. That's pretty rad.
It's cool.
And then back to that kind of spacey and low tempo stuff. I don't know if you guys know Blockhead.
Heard of him? Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like DJ Shadow. Is playing that. So a lot of the stuff I'm playing because it's work music for me. So the instrumental stuff is easy to stay focused on. But then again, going to stuff like Palms, which Chino's got his heavy scream and stuff. So I'm all over the map, just like you, Twan, playing everything from country music to Slipknot to.
That's why we started this thing, man. We just want to talk about a bunch of different music and kind of geek out on that. So.
Mm-hmm.
Can I give a quick ISIS story?
Yeah,
yes,
totally.
Please do.
So the year's 2010. ISIS is playing a co-headlining show with Cave-In from the Boston area in Portland, Maine. Small venue. And I bought a screen print poster. And this was 2010. So this is pre-ISIS terrorist group, connotation. So fast forward to 2016, I have that screen printed poster on in my living room, and we are getting ready to sell our house, and that poster's still in the living room. So we're staging the house, and I ask myself, probably is not a good poster to have in my living room trying to sell a house.
ISIS?
Yeah. ISIS, yeah. Because it says ISIS Cave-In right on it. But anyway, that's my ISIS story. Cool band.
That's funny.
I got an ISIS story. I got an ISIS band story as well. Well, not story, but tangent. The drummer of that band is from Maine.
Oh, really?
Aaron Harris. Yeah.
Really?
Aaron Harris. I met him outside of a Deftones gig in Pomona, California, and was chatting with him and so forth. Super nice guy. But yeah, he's from Maine. I don't want to say Portland, but he's from Maine. We just we're shooting the shit, so that came up that I was from Maine. He's from Maine. We were hanging out. And he's also the drum tech when he's not touring with Palms or whatever side projects he's doing, because ISIS, the band, officially broke up. He's the drum tech for both Tool and Deftones.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite the
So
resume.
it's a
I
cool
have
gig.
I have a question for both of you regarding your ISIS stories.
ISIS the band. You got to say the band.
ISIS the band. Yes, no, neither of you are in ISIS. I understand that. Anthony, did you take the poster down?
Yes.
Okay, good. And you sold your house. We know you sold your house, so that's good.
But I still have it. It's 10 feet from me right now, and I got to find a frame for it.
Perfect. And Nate, were you wearing your Deftones jacket at this gig?
I wasn't.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I hold true to, not wearing the band T-shirt to the show for sure, as much as possible. Even when I buy it there, you got to put it in your back pocket or something.
Yeah, we're nerds, but we're not dorks. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good questions, especially the flyer thing, because we were talking about on the last episode. The show flyers that stuff's gold, man.
I love that stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of Deftones, I have one from the State Theater when they played in '98 from Around the Fur, and I didn't go to that show, but I met someone at a gig. And he was like, he brought it with him, the original flyer that he got off a telephone pole in Portland.
That's awesome.
He went to, or he gave it to me to run to a Kinko's and photocopy it really quick, so I have that as like a counterfeit flyer. Yeah.
Nice. It's always fun. You just have boxes and boxes of this stuff. I need to in storage. I need to get out and start decorating.
Oh man, so much cool stuff. Yeah, I got to do that too, man. I think it's time. We got some downtime.
Yeah, we definitely have some downtime, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Hey, silver lining. Now we can really nerd out between.
Oh
this. Yeah. Like we were talking, we're off the air. We were talking about all of our. Well, Twan, you're organized, man. You got all your stuff online on your spreadsheet. But Tone, you got your stuff. You got your stuff in the booklet.
I got some stuff. Yeah, I've got all the ticket stubs and booklets that aren't elsewhere, but most of them are right here. Actually, my fiance kind of decorated our spare room into my recording studio, which is cool. She put up a couple things on the wall and moved all my music stuff in here. So yeah, it's I got that stuff all right next to me in case we need to pull it up and talk about it. But all of my like posters and some of my frame stuff is all in storage at the moment. So I got to get my hands on that and see what I have, because I can't even remember. It's just so much stuff from over the years.
Yeah, it's gonna bring up some good material and subject matter and so forth, just digging through that stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, we've sent each other videos before we started this podcast, guys. It would be like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or maybe even 12 o'clock your time, Nate. So to 1, 2, 3 in the morning here, and we'd be sending each other 3-minute videos of just boxes of stickers and posters and pins.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, why don't we talk about this?
Air fresheners. I mean, just random stuff.
Whatever we had, right?
Tabletop tents, like little display tents, little display teepees, everything.
Yeah. It's so funny. The stubs I can't wait to go through, because you were talking about Christina Aguilera earlier. I have a Christina Aguilera stub. Oh, nice.
We talked about this in a previous episode. I'm holding up the Asylum's 15-year anniversary ticket flat that I have here, which is probably 8 years old.
Yeah, that's something they renovated it for like the 20th time, and now it's not even called the Asylum anymore.
No, it's Aura now.
I think it's 2008, actually 2009 maybe. Yeah.
Holy crap! Well, I still have it hanging here. It's got a free lunch on it. I should try to bring it in and see if it works.
Yeah, there was some there's some good shows. That thing you just held up, Tone. It's cool because it shows some people that have gone through there. Queens of the Stone Age, Motorhead.
Yep. Moby.
Yeah. Moby.
George Clinton.
Brett
Michaels.
Nice.
So for those not from Maine, all those names are big deals for being in the very corner of the country. To have these bands roll through was awesome growing up.
At a small venue, which we've talked about before. It's a tiny little venue. So it's a little bigger now, but it was a small venue back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the authenticity of small venue, big bands or small coming through Portland is like winning the lottery.
Always cool. Yep. And we used to get a lot of that stuff. A little bit. We still do in the summertime, and there's some new things coming that are a little bigger that we might start seeing some stuff in our area, but nothing like those early 2000s days at the Asylum and the Big Easy and the State Theater, stuff like that. So
Oh, man, good old days. Back when shows were actually happening.
I know. We'll get him back. It might not be till 2021, but we'll get him back.
Yeah, it's another life, another dimension.
I know.
You guys want to get into some music what ifs?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So
You want to lead off?
I'll lead off. I'll kind of set the stage for us. So at least for me, this is totally inspired by Bill Simmons. So Bill Simmons, Boston sports guy, he is the equivalent of us, but for sports. He's got a book called The Book of Basketball, and he has a lot of these kind of what if scenarios. So like, what if this team didn't draft this person? What if this trade never happened? And I always love that stuff. So as an equivalent music nerd, I geek out about this same stuff. So both of us, or all three of us, came up with a few of these, and we didn't tell each other. There's one of them we did tell each other that we're going to do, but all these that each of us are going to tell, the other two have no idea what's coming. So this is totally going to be freestyle. So you guys want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this one here, I'm going to give the what if sentence, and then I'll kind of qualify it, and I'll give some facts, and then we'll open it up. So the punchline is, you guys ready for this? What if Dr. Dre's mother never met Warren G's father?
All right.
So if you didn't know, Dr. Dre and Warren G are stepbrothers. And a lot of people don't know that. So Dre's mom married Warren G's father. So, okay, where are you going with this, Anthony? Well, the big kicker here is Warren G introduced Dre to Snoop. So without that marriage, without that stepbrother, who knows if Dre and Snoop would have ever met? All right,
yeah.
So that's a big thing. Well, then what? Well, if they never met, The Chronic would sound much different because Snoop's all over that album. And then conversely, Doggy Style, Dre produced that. His fingerprints are all over that, whether it's features or production. And then the list goes on and on and on. Death Row Records 100% does not become what it was because Doggy Style was on Death Row, The Chronic, the Dog Pound's Dog Food, Tupac's All Eyes on Me. And all those records put West Coast rap on the map. I mean, it existed before that because you had like Too Short. Too Short was like, the Pimp Daddy rapper from the West Coast, but he didn't put them on the West Coast on the map like that. So I'm going to pause there. I have a bunch of more stuff, but what do you guys think of that?
Wow.
That's
deep.
Yeah, no, so you're telling me that if Warren is Dre's mom.
Yeah, Dre's mom.
Dre's mom doesn't meet Warren G's dad, Biggie might still be alive. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly where I'm going with this.
Damn it, that's what I was thinking too. Biggie might still be alive, and
Tupac
might
might
still be
Pac
alive.
might still be alive. Because think
Maybe
about
they just put their double album out together. Who knows, man? Like,
I mean, think about the Source Awards, the whole West Coast East Coast battle. Like that whole Suge Knight speech, that whole thing does not happen without West Coast rap. And then it gets back to what was the genesis of this, and then the genesis of all of it is those two parents meeting.
That's great. That's awesome. I didn't think of it that way. I definitely had Biggie and Pac had kind of come up in my head as one of the things to talk about, but I definitely didn't, break it down to a couple of stepbrothers. That's awesome.
Wow, that's insane.
So
I remember that the Source Awards, like if the cameras were not rolling, I'm sure that would have been a shootout. Like it was almost like the cameras saved it.
I think you're right. Like it was heated. The audience was loud. And who knows? There could have been shenanigans after or before, that we don't even know about.
It was bad. You could tell just watching videos of it now today. You could just feel the tension in the air when Suge comes out. When those guys just are. It was in New York, right?
I can't remember.
I think it was at Madison Square.
Yeah, so it took place in one area where the other side was very upset and like we're here now. Like listen to us. Like we're screw this East Coast stuff. The West Coast is here now, and it just could have gotten it got out of hand. It could have gotten way more out of hand that night had the cameras not been rolling.
Yeah. Well,
man.
The thing is, one thing because I did a little prep for this. So one thing I was reading that for the years that Death Row was on top, they were making $100 million a year. Wow. I mean, just massive, massive money. And of course, we all know the Suge Knight story. He basically blew it all and got into legal trouble and all that. But the other kind of direction my head went in all this is all of that leading up to, like, when Dre puts out Chronic 2001, he was on top of the world. And then my head goes, he had this huge brand name. Without that brand name, he probably wouldn't have discovered Eminem. And then I get to, well, if he didn't discover Eminem, who discovered him? And then, like, who would have made Eminem's beats? Like, does he still pop?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then with no Eminem, it just keeps going. With no Eminem, does 50 Cent get discovered? What happens with G Unit?
D12,
yeah.
G Unit, Lloyd Banks.
Yeah.
The Game.
Yeah.
Like
Obi Trice.
Yeah. Yep.
And Eminem legitimized white rappers because up until then, you had Vanilla Ice was the biggest white rapper up to that point, and he was not taken seriously. He's a joke in the industry. And even now, there are some white rappers with like Machine Gun Kelly and whatnot, but the list goes on and on. But it's a cool what if, because like if they never met, would Dre have ever met Snoop without the Warren G kind of handoff?
And even just the Dre and Snoop thing, like we don't get Nothing But a G thing. We don't get Still Dre. We don't, you know what I mean? Like there's some just classic Dre and Snoop songs together, let alone all of Doggy Style and whatever else, Dog Pound, stuff like that. That just blows you away to think, like, what if we didn't have some of those songs? Like Nothing But a G thing is absolutely iconic.
Yeah.
To not have that song be a thing because they never met, that would be weird.
Wow. Yeah, that defines so much history, like just those two, or just Dre alone. But it kind of shows how authentic it was back then. Not that it's not authentic now, but I mean, like, it's just like, or it's even down to like the Source Awards, like it was so gangster that people were literally getting like shot. Like, it's not just the songs, like that stuff was like, that was real life. Like now it's like, now it is all talk. Like it's not talk because gang still exists, but like people, like, what was it? P. Diddy and J-Lo getting like shot at like when on the way to the MTV Awards or whatever. Like it's like, I remember seeing that like on MTV and being like, wow, it is gangster rap, because it's all real.
Yep.
Now it's like, I don't know, it's
that
different
doesn't
now.
It kind of blows my mind. I mean, when Tupac was shot and Biggie was shot, we were like 11 years old.
Yep.
And I was big into music. My mom had bought me All Eyes on Me because, again, I had cool parents. And I was like, what? Why is this a thing? Like, why are we killing each other over music? I feel like this is kind of stupid. But it really was, they were living a lifestyle. They're portraying a lifestyle in the music that they were actually living in real life. So that today, I think you get a lot more people portraying a lifestyle that maybe they're not necessarily living, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, where they're actors playing a part sometimes. But as far as the way, gangster rap was in the early to mid 90s, it was legitimate. They were rapping and they were living that lifestyle. And that's why, tragically we lost a handful of rappers that were, iconic.
Yeah. And Twan, you didn't even go into NWA, spawning off that as well with Dre and all those guys. Like, just kind of goes on and on. Eazy-E, obviously he died as well.
Well, that's the thing is I looked at I did a big Dr. Dre deep dive, but I looked at all of his production credits, and it's really extensive, because even if he didn't produce a whole album, he produced specific tracks on some iconic records. But yeah, NWA, Eazy-E, the DOC, those date back, early 90s, late 80s, but obviously we all know his more recent hits. But yeah, the list goes on and on.
Just so much. And just even thinking about losing Eminem and what that would have meant. Even if somebody had found Eminem, would you're like you said, would he have popped with different beats from a different producer? Like maybe not.
I mean, he was a battle rapper. I mean, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That kind of kicks us off. When you guys want to jump to the next what if?
You want to go, Nate?
Mine are a little more casual. They're not that nerdy.
Oh yeah, no, mine too. I can lead off. I got one.
Okay,
so
cool.
What you guys know Kid Rock?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, are we sticking with the Detroit rap?
I was gonna say, what if Joe C never died? But that's I'm not gonna go there. I actually was gonna go with a death, because this obviously a lot of what ifs surround a lot of deaths in the music industry, unfortunately. But what if Brad Nowell never died?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Sublime. So he overdosed on heroin. He had been an addict, had kind of gone in and out of, doing heroin, being in that scene. Had his son and got clean, but relapsed 2 months before the self-titled Sublime album came out in '96.
Wow.
It was late May of '96. Found relapse on heroin overdose. So they had put 3 albums out with Brad as the lead singer. The first one, big one, 40 Ounce to Freedom, which we all are aware of. I would imagine people know Smoke Two Joints, they know Bad Fish, they know Day Rape. Those are the big songs off of that. Bad Fish has morphed into a cover band of Sublime songs now. They regularly tour and just play Sublime songs as a cover band, which is named after that song. And then Robin in the Hood, which I never listened to. I don't know if you guys did. I'll throw that to you.
Not really. No.
Is that what is Seeing Red on that, or is that?
No, that's Unwritten Law.
No, sorry, not Seeing Red. What's the one with Gwen Stefani?
That is on there. Yes.
Okay.
In my notes, I forget the name of the song, but she did. She was on that album before kind of No Doubt took off. Right around when No Doubt was taking off. So.
Yep.
That came out in '94, but I mean, if you look at the track list of that, I couldn't recognize really much as far as that went compared to 40 Ounces to Freedom. And then he ODs, and 2 months later, their biggest album drops, and it was massive. I mean, the self-titled album was massive. You had Wrong Way, you had Santeria, you had What I Got, you had Doing Time, and then even the songs that weren't singles, you had April 29th, 1992, Caress Me Down,
Classics.
Seed, Pawn Shop, like just the
Untouchable.
whole album.
Yeah, untouchable album.
So good.
So they were about to absolutely, I mean, they did blow up, but they were about to absolutely take off. Like that was their, jumping off point, and their lead singer ODs. So imagine what would have happened had he stuck, or had he not OD'd and they were to continue to become. He was clean when they were probably writing a lot of that record, and it was their best record.
Yeah.
What was the album Secondhand Smoke? Like where does that fit into?
I couldn't find that one. Is that like a
compilation or something? I can't.
It must have been, yeah. They had another one too that came out before 40 Ounces to Freedom, but it was just like a tape that was some demos kind of what they would have on later albums. So Proper, those were the 2 that came out before, and then Self-Titled came out right after he OD'd.
Wow. That's insane. Yeah, because they were tiny. They were like opening for. I think we mentioned 311. They were like opening for bands like 311, like tiny, and now they're obviously even bigger than 311 in terms of record sales. I'm sure fan base probably, even though 311's pretty big.
But they were about to take off. I mean, those singles from that album were absolutely iconic. Everybody knows What I Got. Everybody knows Doing Time. Everybody knows Santeria.
Yeah,
those are massive songs. Those permeated the culture. Those weren't just punk ska band hits. They were hits on mainstream radio. They were everywhere. So,
wow.
So I get two comments come to mind. One is the band had to have felt obviously sad, and that goes without saying, but they obviously felt hamstrung because they continued to play. Like they continued to play. In together in different capacities, but it also got me thinking of, so they have this album that's popping, and their creativity to promote it is obviously hamstrung, but it got me thinking, you remember Return of the Mac, Mark Morrison?
Yes.
There was some factoid about him, and this is kind of adjacent, but I'll bring it back. There was a factoid about him that he was like the first person in the history of music to have a #1 while being locked up.
Yeah, he's in jail.
He's in jail. Yeah, so it reminds me of like the Bradley. It's like I'm sure that album went #1 and he's not alive. You know.
When you can't tour on it.
Yeah.
You can't do radio spots. You can't do interviews on MTV because that would have been huge at the time. So
Wow.
to promote that record, it sold 5 million by the end of that year. I think I saw. And they couldn't promote it. Like they could, but you were just playing songs. It wasn't like they were going out on tour and recreating that so people could go and buy the record or, talking to the guys on MTV with Kurt Loder. It wasn't happening.
Jeez, that's so crazy, man. Yeah, and then like you said, like other iterations, they made like Long Beach Dub All Stars with like the other two guys, and now they're touring with this guy Rome. Yep, Sublime with Rome, and the drummer left too now. So now it's Josh Freese.
Yeah, I saw that. I was going to bring that up. Josh Freese, who's in every band ever. So.
Yeah, session drummer.
Yeah.
So he's with Sublime with Rome now.
Yeah, so it's just one original member now. Bud.
Yeah, they came up with Long Beach Dub All Stars and started as Sublime with Rome, but they were billing themselves as Sublime, but Rome was the vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
And the family, Bradley Nowell's family, was like, "No, you gotta change this." So they sued him, and they did. They ended up dropping or adding Rome, so that they could continue to be Sublime with Rome, and people knew the name. But they tried to go out as Sublime again, and Brad's wife was not having it.
I remember that. I think that was in 2009 as well, right? 2009.
It was, yep, 2009. Yep.
Yeah, because I was living in Florida at the time. And I remember seeing the banner. It was like, I think Cypress Hills Smokeout Fest was like the first date, something like that.
They were on that tour.
Yeah. So like it said, the original flyer said Sublime, and everyone was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah, they're still here.
And then it changed to Sublime with Rome.
I've never really gotten into either. I mean, I remember having a couple like compilations with Long Beach Dub All Stars on it, and at the time not knowing any better. And I listened to some of the songs that hit the radio with Sublime with Rome, but never got into them. I mean, I loved that self-titled Sublime record, though. I listened to it all the time.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, like, that is a genre-defining band. It's like reggae, it's rap, it's
punk, it's ska.
I never knew I didn't realize he died before it dropped. I had no idea.
Yeah, 2 months prior. Yep.
It's
crazy. Yeah. It's just to think like what could have been when they were kind of really hitting their stride, and they'd already put out 4 or 5 songs that were pretty big and iconic as far as that band went, but this was like other level for them, and to just have it halted in its tracks like that, which happens a lot in music. I mean, and he wasn't quite 27, he was 28, but just to have that happen, it happens a lot, unfortunately. But that was the one that kind of hit me. I was like, we haven't talked a lot about this genre, and we haven't talked about them at all, and I know we all had that CD. Like we grew up in that time. So
yeah, I have that album, have like a box set from that band, a ton of stuff. What's funny is there's a local artist management company right here in Encinitas, and talked to the guy once before, and he said, we were actually talking about Sublime. He said, they were a great band, but they weren't that great live, and part of it is because Brad was always wasted, whether it was on heroin or alcohol. They were big drinkers too. So I mean, I wonder if they had stuck around, if they maybe cleaned up a little bit and got their act together as a live unit and were able to kind of ride that success a little bit more, or would they continue doing the rock star thing and like crash and burning, when they they have all this, they have something to kind of live up to with that album being so amazing. But if they can't perform live, they might have come to a dead end there, kind of like a Scott Weiland with Stone Temple Pilots type thing, where it's like he was so fucked up that the band like canceled tours, and they released an album, or they were trying to promote an album at one point when Scott was in jail. Came out when he was in jail. Similar scenario that you were talking about earlier. Yeah.
Well, Nate, we saw that firsthand at that Weiland show in Portland.
Yeah.
You remember that? I mean, we can maybe get into that when we talk about STP down the road, because I'm sure we will. Because you and I have seen him. We saw STP together. And we saw Weiland a couple years later with his band, but he was it just didn't look good. It wasn't good on stage. He obviously had done something before going out, and it's like just sad. That stuff's sad.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get into that on a different episode for sure. Yeah, drugs and alcohol. You know, Brad, he would be here today if it wasn't for that.
Yep,
Um,
along many others.
hmm
And they
So that was not to bring it all down. I mean, I could have gone with the Kid Rock one, I guess.
yeah,
well, the thing about Sublime is they're touring off with Rome now, and I can't name. I don't know if they've even put out studio albums with him, but I couldn't name a single song. So the big draw is the back catalog from 25 years ago. So it just shows you like
Right.
that was probably the tip of the iceberg of what they had in them.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, you wonder.
I didn't think
You
of
wonder
that.
with that, like Nate said, maybe they crash and burn, but he doesn't OD. Maybe they aren't as good. Maybe that was just that flash in the pan. You know, those couple of records were just a flash in the pan. So you never know. But that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I thought this is just it was, instead of bringing up like somebody like John Bonham dying from Led Zeppelin, the drummer, and not. It's not like he died when they didn't already have 8 albums out. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is an early on. It's slowed down the progress of probably a band on the way up, which that was what I thought was kind of interesting about it.
Wow.
That's a great one.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really good. Because
Who you got, Nate?
everyone likes Sublime.
Yeah.
So I got super casual on this. I didn't go super
That's
nerdy
fine.
like you guys, but I definitely just thought of some artists or bands, and I'm like, man, what if they were still around? What if they were still going? And what do they, where are they at fan base wise? Sublime's a great example because they're so big on their back catalog. So one that I kind of jotted down was the Ramones, which is obviously a huge act in terms of fan base and what they did to influence the music industry world. And it's just crazy that all these members are essentially have passed away, kind of in order. Joey Ramone in 2001, Dee Dee Ramone in 2002, Johnny in 2004, and Tommy in 2014. And if you look at like anyone's influences or who they state as their influence as a band I as an artist, you'll see Ramones on that list time and time again. And their music, like I got into it a little bit later. I think I got into the Ramones probably 2000-ish. And I was like, oh man, this is such a cool it's like it reminds me of like the Beatles, like really like kind of like sing along jam songs, like fast tempo punk rock songs a little bit. And obviously the CBGB's connection is, it's in like so many of their photographs and so forth. But I wonder like if, Joey didn't die, or like the 4 members that I had mentioned, would they still be going? Would they still be doing it? Because they were kind of like, in a lot of ways, anti-establishment in a lot of ways. So they're kind of doing their thing. And I just wonder, like, would they still be touring? Would they still be writing? They'd be jaded by the whole, how the music industry is kind of transformed and give up,
So I just doing some
ahead.
quick research. They
Mm-hmm.
would be in their probably late 60s now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, the thing is, to me, they're like the punk Rolling Stones. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And,
Yep.
And the Stones are obviously still going. I don't know how, but yeah. And
Stem cell.
and if they were still going, would anyone care at this age?
Yeah, I mean, I never got into the Ramones. I do, obviously, I'm aware of them and their place in history as being, one of the preeminent punk bands early on. But like you said, Nate, they were kind of anti-establishment. And the establishment now, if you're a legacy band like what the Ramones would be or what the Rolling Stones are, is to tour and, maybe even put music out. And maybe they wouldn't want to do that. I mean, so we might, but it would be cool if they were around and still doing that, so that we'd have a chance to see them. Just because I'm a nerd and I would want to see that stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely a good what if as far as how would they have treated today's musical climate before all this coronavirus stuff, where legacy bands, their main income was to still be out touring when you're 60, 65, 70 years old. and be a viable act in some big venues as a legacy act. So that would be interesting for sure.
Yeah, so like you were saying, that's the lens I was looking at this through, was like not so much like really just looking at like the establishment, because just the music industry is just it's a new animal now, you know, like you're not selling records, so like that means the Ramones would be like doing that U2 thing where they're dropping an album on your iTunes. Like it just doesn't seem like that would work with the Ramones. But then again, like they were great musicians, and I'm sure they would maybe want to continue. I don't know. It's hard to see a band like that. I mean, they almost didn't look like they came out when they did. You'd think they were like even like older than that, because they just look so retro. But that was part of their look. Then again, the Rolling Stones are a music industry powerhouse. You know, tour the world, sell out stadiums. They're, you know, as commercial as it gets, and they got started, you know, over 50 years ago. So things can adapt, but it's hard to see with the Ramones. But I would like to think that they would continue in some fashion. And then something else I was thinking about is maybe they would have split up and become, you know, solo artists. Like Joey Ramone would go on, do his own solo thing, and it'd be like when I was talking about going to see David Gilmour from Pink Floyd and being like, oh man, that was like in my top 5, you know, favorite concerts of all time. And he's just a member of that iconic band Pink Floyd. So it'd be like Joey Ramone touring, playing stuff from the Ramones, and you're kind of getting like, you know, and they're all iconic in their own right, but Joey, you know, playing solo and playing Ramones songs, and maybe even playing some solo material that's stacks up, you know, with Ramones songs as well. But I don't know, it's hard to say. But Ramones, like, you know, it's weird because like talking about that music powerhouse and commercialism and merchandising, like, you know, every record store has a Ramones t-shirt for sale. It's just like a staple item, you know. So whether it's, you know, was in their best interest, or it's just like you know, the legacy, and you know,
that
people
reminds me of like those like man on the street things where you see like a 15-year-old kid wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt, and they're like, all right, so what songs by Led Zeppelin do you like? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like maybe the same idea if somebody wearing a Ramones shirt, like, all right, like, so is I Want to Be Sedated your thing? Or they're like, what do you mean? I'm too young for that. I just bought the shirt at JCPenney.
So Nate, you took the words out of my mouth where you were like, just something about the Ramones in this, I'll say this technological climate, like with technology, just doesn't seem right. And where my head went is like, what if the Ramones are still around in 2020 and I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see an ad that says, check out the Ramones' new digital single on Spotify. It'd be like, what the hell is, like, it just would not. Right. And the thing is, like I said, they'd be like 70 now, maybe still playing when they're 60, but their type of music, they're in a interesting group of bands, and we'll probably get to this in future episodes, where they're probably bigger now than they ever were. So it's like the demand for them would put them in like maybe an arena show, and I don't think they'd be down for that.
No, yeah. Well, and that, I mean, comes back to the Sublime thing. Like, Sublime with Rome is touring on music from 25 years ago. And would the real Sublime still be doing that today? Maybe not. So
right. Huh.
Yeah, they might be like picking, like, it's like one of those bands that we love seeing that it plays like one song off their, like, the album we love. Incubus comes to mind with Science. They play like one song, but they're mainly touring and, you know, rehearsing all their new material that, you know, maybe we're not as big on, you know. So it's like that back and forth. Like Sublime, that's all they tour on. They might drop a new album as a way to get tour support to go on the road, when really they're really just touring off that old stuff. Whereas the so I don't know, man.
What about excuse me, the Ramones with Rollins? You know, they have a new singer.
That would be cool.
The Ramones with Ryan Adams before his scandal or something, you know.
Yeah. That would be to see one of those types of bands out with like a different front man that maybe is a little bit younger and can pull off the energy of those early songs. That would be absolutely badass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the Ramones with Billy Joe.
You would love that probably. You know, I have always mixed feelings about bands that go on tour with someone to fill the shoes to make it happen. Usually I'm okay with it because if it's a good show and it's a good fit, Journey comes to mind. They have the guy from the Philippines, saw them with him, and they kill it. That's great show. Journey's
Steve
a great
O'Sherry,
band.
is that
Yeah,
his name?
Steve. Well, that was the guy before that. I was going to say Steve
Oh,
O'Jerry.
okay.
Yeah.
Which is funny because first lead singer of Journey was Steve Perry. So
Yeah.
Steve O'Sherry, Steve Perry.
Steve Perry. Any basketball fans out there?
Oh, love basketball. How to speak San Franciscan. We'll leave it at that.
That was a good one, Nate. My head did not go. Well, my head didn't go to Sublime or Ramones, so those are good polls.
Yeah, we aren't just metal.
Right.
Yeah, we like everything. But yeah, both those bands, Sublime and Ramones, are making enough money on their merchandise against their own wishes, probably.
Yeah, the estate likes it.
Yeah, the estate. It's all about the estate.
Yeah.
You want to keep the train going?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's go.
So my second one, which we actually had discussed before this, and I think this one, I don't know if it could be a full episode, but we could go on and on for this one. So I think we'll probably keep this one light. But the what if is what if Cobain doesn't shoot himself?
Allegedly.
So what if Cobain is still alive? So the obvious is Nirvana would have continued beyond where they ended. Now it's a question of how much further, who knows. And then it gets into Dave Grohl. Does he ever, if Nirvana sticks around, does he ever get out behind the drum kit? So does Foo Fighters still exist? So those are kind of the high level punchlines that I came up with. It's like, what happens then? Are they still a band in 2020?
So what you're saying is if Cobain doesn't die, Taylor Hawkins is still drumming for Alanis Morissette.
That's super nerdy, but I like it because I knew that too. But a lot of people probably don't know that.
Yeah, he drummed before if anybody's watched that Foos DVD, I think it's in there.
Yep.
From when they put out Wasting Light back 10 years ago. Yeah, if he drummed for Alanis before taking over as drummer for the Foo Fighters, because Dave he was a drummer for the first couple of albums, because he wasn't really keen on the sound that he was getting from the guy they had there. But then he brought Taylor in, and obviously the rest is history as far as the Foo Fighters go. So.
Yep. Yeah, I had to explain that because it would be completely random to a lot of people.
I know it's for us, but I don't mind explaining. This is where my brain goes, man. I mean, you give me a Cobain dies, I get what about Taylor with the Alanis Morissette?
Yeah, during Jagged Little Pill and everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Which is a banger of an album. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. Probably because Taylor was on it, honestly.
Those drums just hit different.
They do. They really do. After that, Alanis was kind of lost her way.
One hand in her pocket into insignificance.
Hailing a drummer. Hailing Ryan Reynolds. More nerdery that nobody knows but us, probably, but whatever.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the conclusion that I put on this is not a chance in hell if Cobain is still alive in 2020. Nirvana is still a band. No way.
I agree.
Really?
Yeah, it's almost like the Sublime thing. It's like there was so much going on there that they probably would have continued, but not 30 years or 25 years later or whatever it was.
I'd like to think he got clean-ish and was maybe a political pundit of some sort. You know what I mean? Like just, became an activist, became somebody who was just fighting for, like Morello-esque. Where he just wanted, was still a great musician, would still tour occasionally with Nirvana just as like one-offs here and there, but also, devoted to some of the causes that he had in his heart going back when he wasn't doing drugs.
Wow. Yeah, I'm thinking about this on the spot, but I'm thinking, okay, so if they broke up and Kurt's still alive because the other two are still alive, I think that he would maybe, probably be writing music as a solo artist, maybe.
I could see
like that David Gilmour thing I was talking about earlier, because he's such a fantastic songwriter and amazing voice. And we talked about that Unplugged album a few times, and it's like that really showcases his ability as a singer songwriter in an acoustic format. So I'm like, okay, so if he did this if he went solo, he might just continue doing it like that and be at these big festivals where it's like just Kurt Cobain. But the other side of me was thinking, maybe if they did stay together, would they just like, do one-off shows once in a while?
I think that's it. I think it's the Coachella. Yeah. Are they going to do a full U.S. tour? I could not see that.
Yeah,
maybe once, but it's not happening every summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, limited kind of thing, one-off thing, like doing Glastonbury or like these really big, like you're traveling all the way to Europe to see their one show for like the last 10 years kind of thing, like a David Bowie type thing. Yeah, I think you're right. I was trying to think like, because I feel like, Alice in Chains is still going. Obviously, they have a new singer. Pearl Jam's still going, and most of the full lineup. Soundgarden was reunited in 2009 until Chris also killed himself, Chris Cornell. But, I see, and I think that's where I'm thinking about with the Cobain thing, because Chris Cornell as a solo artist was fantastic, mostly, except for I wasn't a big fan of Scream.
Yeah.
I think that was pressure from the label to put out something to sell records. But it's a pop record that doesn't make any sense for anyone that's curious. Yeah, man, that's a great. My wheels are spinning right now trying to think about it. So, it's just mind-boggling.
You think? Okay, so Nirvana, they're all still alive. They do some one-offs here and there. The Coachellas, the Glastonbury, the Boston Calling, stuff like that. Lollapalooza, maybe. Do we get Foo Fighters at all? Like, I hope we do. I think we get something because Dave can't sit still. Like, we know that. Dave was the drummer in Queens of the Stone Age for an album that he's done. Was it Probot? One of those. Yeah. He's been in something. He's writing stories right now on Instagram. Like, he'd do something. So we get something from Dave that that we all probably know, love, and cherish still because he just can't sit still. So is it the amount of Foo Fighters that we've gotten? Probably not, but it's probably similar. And I like Foo Fighters more. I want all the Foo Fighters, so I'm fine with that. But as long as we would still get some of that, I'd definitely be okay with it.
What's the chronological timeline here? So when does Cobain die?
94.
Yep.
Right.
April 5th, right? It just happened. The anniversary just happened.
That's right. So then when does self-titled Foos come out?
95.
Yeah, and there was all Dave, right? He did everything. He played drums, he played guitars, he wrote the songs. That was all him.
You see where I'm going with this? It's almost lending itself to him having that on the side even during Nirvana.
Beforehand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that, but
although
he's a freak and he might have just put all those songs together right after that happened,
It's hard to tell. I know that he did that whole record was him. He didn't put his name on it because he wanted the music to be judged as the music, not as this is Nirvana's drummer who put out this record. So, and obviously it did well, and it turned into Foo Fighters being one of the biggest rock bands of the last 30 years, 25 years. So,
yeah, it's a little nerd tidbit on that. He wanted the band, so he wrote that album as a therapy session, kind of, as far as I'm concerned, because of Kurt's death. I think he was writing while in Nirvana, just like a lot of musicians do, will just like write music just for the sake of writing, get these ideas out of their heads. They're not going crazy.
Or forget them, because I forget shit.
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. And I think the Foo Fighters thing, like you said, Tone, is exactly right. He didn't want it to be, this is Dave Grohl solo. This is just like something I did. And I think he wanted it to be a band no matter what. So if he did make this, come to some, form to something, he wanted it to be a band. And part of that was something like a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, where it's like a group. Well, to that point, he might have actually gone to the Heartbreakers because Tom Petty had recruited him to be the drummer for Tom Petty. So he might have just joined Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and been their drummer until Tom Petty recently passed away a few years ago, which I think might have actually maybe happened just because the Heartbreakers are such fantastic songwriters, and Grohl as a drummer for them would have changed their sound dramatically. But he might have gone that route too. So he had some options, I think he was asked to join the Heartbreakers.
I forgot about that Petty thing because he definitely almost did it.
Oh yeah. He was asked to do it. I think he did at least one gig on Saturday Night Live or something like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Grohl is, like you said, there's no way he would have just stopped making music. Which route would he have gone? I don't know, because he's a big metal fan, like we were talking about last time with the Grohl stories and his fandom for bands like Pantera. He could have made a metal band, you know what I mean? But instead he did a metal project. He did a stoner rock project. He did super group with Them Crooked Vultures with John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, for Christ's sake. Like, the guy is awesome. Super just fantastic artist.
So here's a different what if that spawned off of this one, because this is what we do here. We tangent. Yep. Cobain lives. They're very, very popular right before this. He passes, obviously. Dave wants to do all these other things just because he's Dave. Mm-hmm. Is that the reason that Nirvana breaks up?
Oh,
Probably,
wow.
Right? Maybe Nirvana breaks up in 1998 because Dave's like, I got these 2 albums on board. I wanted, Homie's calling me to be drummer on this Queen's record.
Yep.
In a year or two, and maybe he's just like, I got too much going on, man. I don't want to just do Nirvana anymore. I'm ready to be Dave Grohl of all these different things, because that's what he is now.
Jeez.
I think yes. I think that's the end of it. I see Cobain as the kind of guy that's like, okay, you want to do that, then we're done. Like, in not even in like a spiteful way, just like, all right, this has run its course. I'm on to the next thing, or I'm done with music, or I'm disappearing into the woods or something.
Yeah. That's
cool.
The inner band dynamics that we'll never really know. But if you watch like the documentary, I think I mentioned Metallica last time. I do a lot. James Hetfield, the original, or not the original, he replaced Cliff Burton, but one of the bassists for Metallica, wanted to put out a band, Echo Brain, little side project band. And James was like, oh, fuck you. You want to do your own project? You're out. But he didn't officially fire him. He was just like, screw you. Metallica is our baby. If you want to do something that's going to distract from Metallica, go fuck yourself. And it's like Echo Brain was ever going to like trump Metallica in the first place.
And I think they stunk. Yeah, they stunk.
Yeah. But it shows you, to your point, like it could cause some tension, and Kurt might have been like, oh, Dave, you want to do these little side things? No. If your heart's not completely in this band, the band's done. I quit for the band. I'm going to quit. I'm going to disband altogether because of you even bringing this up in the first place. So it could happen. Yep. I mean, who knows, man?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Wow.
And Grohl,
there's a lot of good what ifs off the Cobain death, obviously.
He was in Scream, the hardcore punk band, even before Nirvana. So that that really cements the thought that this dude can't sit still. So he would have done something
He'd have
else.
found his way.
Yeah. So if it was Foos or some other form of Foos, we would have got something else.
Hey, it might have even been Josh Freese, like we were talking about earlier. He's in every band. Like Dave played session drums on like Killing Joke, one of their albums. Like he's a session guy, like you said, Tony.
Nails. He did a couple Nails songs.
Nine Inch Nails. Yep. So many different projects. Can't sit still.
Yep.
And then what's the bassist name for Nirvana?
Chris Novoselic.
Yeah, well, you were saying something about politics earlier. That guy went into politics.
Yeah. He actually there's in Portland there's a bowling alley, Bayside Bowl. He appeared there in the last 2 or 3 years. He was
really
rallying behind some cause, some political thing, and I saw him. He was kind of in the corner, and people were interviewing him. I forget what the cause was, but yeah, he went down that route.
Wow.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah. He also played in a band called Flipper, which is a little small band out of Seattle as well.
Wasn't Moby in Flipper?
Where's Settle at? We need Settle.
Settle.
All right, I'm going to fact check that, and I think he was. But so who's next?
We can move on to the next one. I think I am next. Nate will like this one. I think you both will. I think it's more of an abstract discussion than a what if that is going to lead into not just this one band, but I always like thinking about it through this lens. So, what if in 2003, Atmosphere, who is an underground hip hop, and they're not super underground anymore. They're pretty well known as far as musicians go. Hip hop group from Minnesota. What if they signed that major label deal in 2003 before they put out Seven's Travels, which was one of their biggest and best albums to date back in '03, and the one that kind of I saw them on tour for the first time, and that's kind of when I fell in love. But they were being courted by everybody: Interscope, Sony, Warner's, Atlantic, and Universal all wanted a piece. And they said no and went with Epitaph, and it was more for distribution, it looked like, because they were still on Rhymesayers, which is their own label out of Minneapolis, which was founded in 1996, and they've been with them from the beginning. Atmosphere is a rapper, Slug, beat maker, Ant, and then a DJ occasionally, Mr. Dibbs. But my wonder is, so if that doesn't happen, so maybe Seven's Travels isn't as good as it was, and kind of put them on the map a little bit. They were buzzworthy in that buzz bin with Trying to Find a Balance back in 2003.
Yep.
A little later in the decade, 08, 09, 10, Slug and Ant decided to bring a band in and tour with a band and put a couple albums out with a band writing songs. So they kind of completely changed their format, essentially, from instead of being beatmaker, rhymesayer, and DJ. It's like, nope, now we've got drums, we've got a bass, we've got a guitar. We're going to write music around that too. And that, was experimental stuff. There was some really good stuff that came out of that. Does that even happen if they're on a major? Probably not. So, and then for them to just be able to do what they want to do creatively for the last 24 years or so, and have all the answers for themselves, which is, I'm sure, more work. But to not be told you've got to do it this way because this is the box that you're in from a major label. That's that was the one that came to mind for me, and I thought that would be. It's obviously not just an Atmosphere question. There've been plenty of bands that have said yes to the major label and flopped because they got stuck in that box, and there've been plenty of bands who said no, we don't want to, and then there are ones that said yes and were good enough to have their own creative control, like a la Pearl Jam. So. There's definitely some stuff there. What do you guys think with that?
Yeah, well, where my head went is with them, who I always have viewed them as like the underground kings. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've called the shots the whole time. So where I go with that is, so that, say they sign major label. Obviously, major label, they hold all the cards. They can hold an album up. We need the single. And for a band like that, or for a group like that, who that's not their bread and butter, they're not going to do it as good as someone who's willing to sell out. So in that regard, no one wins, because the hip hop consumer that loves major label hip hop, something might not sound right, and then you, Tone, who's the underground hip hop head, you're gonna be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quick 30-second tangent. The band H2O, they like a hardcore punk band from New York. They signed major label. The major label release is like a fifth-rate Newfound Glory. Like no one liked it. So it's
I remember that.
Yeah.
It was super radio friendly. Yeah.
Change the band.
Yeah.
They're no longer what they were to get signed in the first place, which is always that conundrum with the major label. It's like, okay, we love what you guys do with your indie underground sound. We're going to sign you and we're going to change you. Like, why?
Yeah.
The ingredients don't mix. It doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. The analogy that came to my mind is like an authentic, like, Italian restaurant. With amazing food, people right off the boat from Italy, and then like an Olive Garden where it's like a commercialized version of Italian food, which is like frozen food, like nasty. Like, no offense to anyone at Olive Garden,
but OG.
You know what I mean?
OG will not be sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah, just it's not authentic, and when it's not authentic, I don't know why these corporations think that they can trick the consumer, because and even though Olive Garden makes millions of dollars, and even though these major labels make millions of dollars, if you're a real fan of music, you'll know. You can taste it, you can smell it, you can hear it, and immediately you're kind of like disappointed, and you either move on, like we were talking about with like Head PE last episode.
Yep.
Like, well, that was like a reverse. Like they actually went to like an indie label, but the quality, you know, it's just there's something was missing, so we were no longer interested, unfortunately. And the Atmosphere thing's a great pull because that's like ahead of their time, because that's kind of like a Post Malone today, where he owns all his rights, right? And Atmosphere owns like probably a majority of their music because of that route. And had they not done that, yeah, like you said, they'd be tied up in a record contract and writing songs just to get out of their deal, and then it gets stale, and everyone's disgruntled. The fan, the artist, things fall apart when everyone's under that kind of pressure. So that was a ballsy move. They must have known. They must have had some kind of like insider tip, like, "Hey, don't sign because you're gonna be regretting this later." Because I feel like that's a hard thing to.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of money put on the table, but I mean, there's that line, and I forget the name of the song at the moment, but we still say "fuck a major label till it limps."
Yeah, and now it is.
Yeah. So, and I mean, yeah, no, look at the way things are today. This is 03, so there's not the internet distribution that we see today. There's not 3 guys in a bedroom, 2 guys in a bedroom making an album together.
Yep.
Or a podcast for that matter. But yeah, to say no to that when you could have had the full weight of an Interscope or a Sony behind you, and they would have promoted you far greater than you could have monetarily, but does your music's not as good because they're making you do, you know, that's a radio song, we can play that on the radio. And just they've never been a radio band. They've had a couple songs, but they've never been a radio band or radio hip hop group. So that's the, you know, that's that conundrum for any band that's coming up that is starting to make waves. Do we take that money and, you know, you sell our soul a little bit, or do we say, no, we have a vision, we know where this is going to go, we're fine with what we're going to be over the next 20 years, and, you know, hold all the cards to themselves?
Wow.
Well, say they say they sign, it bombs, it stinks commercially. OG fans hate it. What do? Did they come crawling back in the room? Hey guys, we're now back in the underground scene. You want to take us back? Well, you know, who knows?
Well, in 03, that's tough. I think today you take the money and maybe you know, if it bombs, you can still go back to your computer and be okay. But in 03, probably not.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting. It's 03. It's interesting. It's 03 because that was after Napster. So like, there was already like a precursor out there, like, oh, this is probably going to take off someday. I wonder that if the contract was put on his table during like, the first 2 albums, Lucy 4. What was the album before that?
Lucy 4 and God Loves Ugly.
God Loves Ugly. Let's say like someone put a major label contract in front of him during those albums. He might have had a different story. He might have folded then, because 03 was like just far enough where it's like, you're starting to see where this is going, if you're smart enough.
Exactly.
If you're smart
enough.
There's
iPods. There's
you're smart. I mean, it still takes a lot to reject that, because with a contract, you're getting a lot. You're getting distribution, like you were mentioning, which is probably the biggest plus in signing a contract. You're getting tour support. You're getting radio play. I mean, it's literally like when I did an internship at Virgin EMI, like just calling radio stations, telling them to play the single. You basically have an army of people pushing your record for you, you know? So yeah, you're saying no to all that. And it goes back to the conversation last time. Like, you're good at being an artist. This is referring to putting out your own festival thing. You're good at being an artist. You may not be good at the business part of it, even though you think you are.
Right.
Because you think it's just all it takes is connections and money and you can make it happen. Or like in Atmosphere's situation, I don't even think they had the money. So that's why this is really surprising.
Yeah. Well, they had made waves. They'd been around for 7 years or so at that point, and had a couple of one album for sure that was big locally, and then one that was that had hit underground nationally. Wasn't huge by any stretch, but for them was their jumping off point. And God Loves Ugly, which is an all-time underground hip-hop record. Please go check it out if you haven't listened to it. He sounds much different today, but he's an old man with kids now, and it's understandable. I still like the stuff today, but the old stuff was just, the energy was much more. It was almost like a punk rock show. Like, you'd go to a concert, and there'd be points where he'd have Mr. Dibbs play something to have a mosh pit in the middle of a rap concert. So That was just stuff you weren't seeing then. And like you said, like they understood the business of it, I think, and that's why they said no and said we know that we'll be okay doing what we're doing. And I mean, if you look at Rhymesayers, they've been around for 25 years now, and they've got more than just Atmosphere. Atmosphere is one of the big ones, but they've had others come through that have become fairly big, and Brother Ali and Evidence and just a couple of Blueprint off the top of my head. Doomtree
POS is on there.
POS was on there before he went back to his Doomtree roots, which another story for another day. But they're doing okay. They've figured it out. They had people behind the scenes at Rhymesayers that were like, "This, we can do this. We'll be okay," and they were right, I think. So
yeah, they'd seen enough up to that point to know what they could do on their own merit, and they were good with that because they could obviously sell out if they wanted to, and they didn't want to go down that route. So I like that. That's a good what if.
Yeah, I thought so. And I actually shout out to my fiance Jess for that one. She helped me flesh that one out.
Nice. Wow.
Nate, you want to take us home?
Yeah, I have a few. Let me pick and choose here. I'm gonna go with. This is actually. This is gonna go way back. So, and this is also very casual, just because it'll just get your wheels turning. What if Jimi Hendrix was still going today?
I had that one written down too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice, because I think it came up with the 27 Club.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, man, Jimi Hendrix. It's actually probably, I kind of almost attribute my love for classic rock to Jimi Hendrix solely. I think it was, ironically, the first classic rock album that I had picked up. I think it was influenced from my brother and my uncle. So I picked that up, got the greatest hits, and then kind of opened the door to like that era of music, which is amazing, just fantastic. So Jimi Hendrix, he's like the Michael Jordan of guitar, like just phenomenal. And he died so young, and influenced so many. And I wonder like where he'd be today. I think he would still be going, just because B.B. King played right until he passed away, like literally like a year and a half ago or so. Buddy Guy. And these are obviously more like jazzy type people, soul. But just like people that are artists that just continue to play until like they either pass away and they don't just retire and they don't just fade away. They just keep going. Muddy Waters, like all these people. So I just wonder if Jimi Hendrix was around still. He was also a Seattle guy. The way he played was pretty insane, maybe he wouldn't be playing like that, but he also has a great voice. He's also a really good songwriter, and he had a good, really solid, tight band as well. So I think that, bringing this up, that I think he would still be going. I think he's so in touch with the music, and it was coming from such an honest place that he would still be writing and he would still be touring. Maybe not with a bandana laced with LSD, but he would still be playing nonetheless. And he'd be like one of those stadium rockers, like, going to see Jimi Hendrix at whatever stadium where he's headlining Coachella and so forth. I think he would still be doing it just because he could play his old stuff, like you were saying with Sublime, and maybe he'd be writing new stuff that's more like where he's at today, maybe even more like a folk route or something like that, or bluesy, more like a bluesy route, kind of mellowing out a little bit. I don't know. I was just thinking about it kind of a few days ago, and I was spinning a few of those records, and I was like, man, this guy's got a lot of versatility, and I think he's underrated as a songwriter. I think a lot of people focus on his guitar work, which is obviously groundbreaking, but he's actually a really good songwriter, and his band is really, really good.
Yep.
So, yeah, what do you guys think?
He'd be 77.
Yeah.
Right now.
Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I feel like in the early mid 90s or even early 90s to late 2009s, he would have been the ultimate session musician. You know what I mean? Like he could have been like, oh, did you hear that track that Soundgarden put out with Jimi Hendrix, or that track? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like some of those big rock acts that,
like Santana.
Yeah,
that's where my head went.
Santana song with Jimi Hendrix too, and not just Jimmy playing guitar, but also singing, and he could have been like the ultimate Nate Dogg for rock music. I think like it ain't a hit till Jimmy spits. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I could totally see that.
Do you hear that new Rob Thomas, Jimi Hendrix song, "Smooth"?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah, and Santana's great. I mean, don't get me wrong, that song's amazing.
Also, yeah, very legendary
Yep.
guy.
Yep. He could have done something similar to that. Been, come and gone with other artists, but also been continuing to put out his own music, maybe mellowing and going a little bluesier because he definitely had that in there, in some of his older stuff, early stuff. So I think you're right. I think if he were still alive, he may still be contributing to music today in some form or fashion.
Yeah, you think? Yeah.
I think it's tough to say in 2020, but if you go back to Woodstock '99 or Lollapalooza, I could totally seeing him, whether he was even active at that time, coming back and say, "Hey, we get Jimi Hendrix experience headlining," and it'd be mass hysteria.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or Coachella, even in like when was the first year of Coachella?
99. Sorry.
99. Okay,
Oh,
so
wow.
say like 2004, and Jimi Hendrix is playing Coachella. Like
Bonnaroo.
Bonnaroo. Yeah, people would have absolutely gone to those and been, Jimmy and the Band of Gypsies.
No, I agree, because like even today, even like the last, you go to like a somewhat recent Coachella, and you'll have like some newer artists, but then you'll have like Paul McCartney.
Right.
It's not the Beatles, and I don't know if Paul McCartney's really appealing to maybe that 12 15-year-old like Coachella party goer or whatever, but it is like Paul McCartney from the Beatles, and he puts on a fantastic show. And I feel like, yeah, you're right, I think Jimi Hendrix would either do that as solo, or we get the band back together. I'm trying to think of a band that like came back together. The Police came back together for a reunion tour and played all their best hits. They were super tight, Stuart Copeland, one of the best drummers of all time. And then they disappeared. They did it and they left. It was just like, all right, we did it. But yeah, they were headlining next to like, these Smashing Pumpkins. And I think when I saw them, it was like the Police, Smashing Pumpkins, and like some other Kanye West or something was headlining a festival I went to.
Or Guns N' Roses puts out Chinese Democracy, but it's with Jimi Hendrix on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, instead of Buckethead.
In an alternate universe.
Yeah. Sorry, Buckethead, but we're bringing Jimmy in for this one. I know it's only taken 14 years for this to drop, but here it is.
No, the Rob Thomas Santana thing is a good point, because it's like John Mayer with like the guys from Grateful Dead. Like that stuff's viable,
I would have loved like an all lefty MTV Unplugged with Clapton and Hendrix together. That would have been badass.
Yeah.
Actually, Tone, I think the session musician is probably the most likely outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I almost see it as Hendrix being like the 2020 cheat code, where like if you remember, Kanye put out that track with Rihanna and Paul McCartney.
Yep.
And everyone was like, "Who's this?" All the young guys were like, "This Paul McCartney dude's gonna really pop. He killed it on that Kanye track." It'd be like that, where like you'd have, I would say, no genre would be off limits. You'd have hip hop guys wanting to get that groovy.
Harlick, yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be possible if he was still with us.
I just think he would have been, he would have been the guy that people called on to, lend his chops to beef up a track,
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, when you mentioned Eric Clapton earlier too, that's another reason why I think he would keep going, because Eric Clapton like continues to keep on he puts out albums and he still tours, even though like every 4 years he says he's never going to tour again. But yeah, I don't know. Be interesting if he was still going, because he's just so legendary. But
yeah, that's a good one. I had written that one down just because I thought that would be something that we could definitely riff on for a little while. And he was just so iconic as a guitar player and just band leader too. I mean, there were some classic Jimmy songs. So Hey Joe and All on the Watchtower, and which is a Dylan song, but still, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I was going to correct you on that too, but no, you're a nerd. You know.
I know.
So you know what this tells me is we gotta have a round 2 in a future episode of this.
Yes, we have a round 2 in a future episode for sure.
Like it already got the gears spinning, where it's like I thought of a few. That I would want to bring up.
I'm showing you guys on here. I wrote down a bunch. I mean,
I'm trying not to look. It was blurry enough.
my handwriting is trash.
So I did some fact checking,
Yeah.
and Moby
Are you a stat boy right now?
Moby was in Flipper. He was the lead singer for 2 days. So I dug deep into the nerd bank on that one. And Nate, you're probably the first person outside of message boards that even knows about Flipper. They're one of those like urban legends, like the Loch Ness Monster, where like people know of the band name but have never heard the music. It's like Flipper. Yeah, Moby was in Flipper. I knew that. Or Grohl was in Flipper. It's like, all right.
I have never heard of Flipper until tonight. So I learned something tonight too.
Oh man, well that's from those those Wikipedia deep dives. So like I think I was looking at Nirvana, I went to Flipper, and then Flipper went to a different band, and it's kind of like went on forever. Still goes on
and
today.
All of a sudden you're on the dark web and you're paying for something illegal.
Well, the thing is with Flipper on Moby's, because I just fact checked it on his Wikipedia. It's like in like the B-sides, like you have to dig for it. It's a small footnote in his catalog for a guy that, it's not like he's done a ton, but anyway.
It's way further down from when he got stumped by Obi, right?
Jeez.
Poor Moby. Nobody listens to tech now.
Well, it kind of goes to your point with Dre. Dre's credits like on the Nine Inch Nails Fragile album. It's like that's probably buried in there.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh wow.
But even deeper, right? Great song.
Yeah.
So I'll leave you guys with this about Moby. Do yourself a favor later tonight when you're chilling and you want something to laugh at. Pull up Google, type in Moby's tattoos, and just have fun with it.
All right. That's a good note to end on. Go look for some Moby porn.
It's definitely.
Is there
not
a lot?
That. What's that?
Is there a lot of tattoos?
Well, no, it's his own tattoos on his body. They're recent.
Oh, okay.
You'll know when you see it.
All right, I'll check that. We can talk about that at the top of next week.
I think that wraps the episode, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, this is gonna be a recurring segment because we got a lot. There's just so much cool stuff to talk about here.
Yeah, and we have a full-on Google Doc full of things. We just keep adding.
Yeah.
So we're not in any shortage of nerdery topics to discuss here on the Podioslave podcast, brought to you by Nerdery Productions.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. Definitely add us on all the socials. Hit us up there. We're pretty active on it. Shoot us an email if you have any content ideas, any segment ideas. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, man. Have a good night. We'll talk to you guys next week. Appreciate the listen.
See you next week.
Thanks all.